You can find this podcast and others at Gun Rights Radio Network, gunrightsradio.com. Podcasting freedom.
Hello and welcome to episode 29 of Shooting the Breeze, the formal gun podcast of WaltIDPA.com. I am Walt White, and this week I have a show that I hope is going to be a little bit shorter than usual. I was really busy this weekend with family stuff, and it just didn't work out where I had a whole lot of time sitting in front of the computer to do research for use of inside my show notes to generate notes for the podcast. So what I wound up with was 2 pieces of news, barely 3 pieces of featured content. I've got a cigar and drink pairing as usual, and I've got a discussion topic that I just kind of pulled out of thin air, much like last week. Things just didn't pan out. I've been chipping away at Glock, the book Glock, The Rise of America's Gun. I'm getting further and further along. However, I'm just not finished it yet, which is completely amazing. I'm just kind of blown away that I'm not finished that book yet. It's not very substantial. I mean, we're talking like 250 pages, and I still have not been able to churn through that book. When I first picked that thing up, I was thinking a week tops and I'd be done, but it's wound up taking substantially more time to get through that book. So that's going to be coming in another episode, but I don't have a whole lot of time to do this podcast this time around. As I said earlier, I had just a lot of family stuff going on this weekend, and I just got home not all that long ago, and it's going to be bedtime fairly soon, and 4:30 comes real early. So I want to get done as much as possible, which I'm hoping is about a 45-minute show. And then, I'll let you be on your way. And next week, maybe we'll return to these gargantuan hour and 15-minute, hour and 20-minute shows, which I really don't do on purpose. I just kind of get gabby. So, with that said, let's get rolling right into the pre-news banter that I do. The first thing I wanted to talk about is actually the discussion topic for last show. I talked about wanting to do modular PVC target stands just to be able to break down, throw them in a bin in my trunk, and take them in and out of my car when I get to the range. I have these modular setups, and I didn't get a chance to make them. I was planning on doing it this weekend, but it just didn't work out. So I was out yesterday, and I picked up some more PVC fittings. And the reason I picked up more stuff is because I was planning on all these target stands using 8-foot lengths of PVC. I've seen it before. I'm almost positive I've seen 8-foot lengths before. I thought that was the standard. But when I went to the local hardware store to buy them, the mom and pop hardware store, all they had were 10-foot lengths. And I know I needed about 1.5 8-foot lengths to get 3 target stands. And 10 feet wasn't enough, so I wound up buying 2 sections at the hardware store. 2 sections wound up giving me more PVC, so I thought, I might as well pick up some more fittings and see if I can squeeze 1 more target stand out of all this PVC. So rather than going back to the mom and pop hardware store where I spent a fortune on PVC and fittings, I went to the local Lowe's, and lo and behold, it was far, far cheaper there. I mean, simple stuff too. Like 90-degree PVC elbows, I think I paid like $1.39 at the local hardware store, the mom and pop shop. I think they were like 89 cents or 99 cents at Lowe's. So there was a substantial savings there, considering you're buying 4 per target stand. And even the tees were a considerable amount less. I don't remember exactly what I paid for them at Lowe's, but they were $1 something. I think at the hardware store, the mom and pop shop, they were $2 something, I think, and I wound up buying a handful of those. So PVC and PVC fittings were much, much cheaper at Lowe's. I about fell over when I saw the price of PVC at Lowe's because it was substantially less per section than at the local mom and pop shop. I do like doing local business kind of a thing. I like supporting local business when I can, but for something like this where I'm just trying to make down and dirty target stands on the cheap, that was the that was not the way to go. So if you're interested in creating your own target stands based out of PVC pipe and fittings, my suggestion would be to go to the big box store, because you're going to spend far less on your project. So definitely go that route. Besides the PVC target stands, before we get into the news, I wanted to talk a little bit about both Top Shot and Top Guns, which are on the History Channel. Actually, History Channel and H2. H2 is where Top Guns is featured. But one of the things I hear about Top Shot, or one of the things that I used to hear about Top Shot, was that from friends of mine that didn't have cable packages that included history, or they had some satellite provider and they didn't include history in their package. They used to tell me, I want to watch it, but I can't. And my suggestion has always been, well, just watch it online. You can watch the entire episode online, which is fantastic about the History Channel. Just go to history.com and start looking up shows. All of the popular shows that they put on are available in their entirety online, and they become available like 2 or 3 days after they air. So, I don't really stress missing an episode of Top Shot or an episode of Axemen or Swamp People or anything like that. If I miss an episode, it's no big deal. I don't have a DVR, so I just hop in front of the computer a couple of days later, pull up the website and watch it. And the commercials are far less annoying as well. Well, some of them are really annoying, but they're far less in volume. They're much shorter. So, if you're interested in watching Top Shot and you don't have it on your cable package, it's a reality-based shooting program. They follow a house full of shooters around, and they do various competitions. People are voted out and things, but you can do so on the History Channel. And there's also a new show this season, and it is called Top Guns. Now, this looked much more interesting to me. I like Top Shot, but it's not, I don't think it's very fulfilling. It's just entertainment. And when I saw advertisements for Top Guns, I thought, wow, this looks like it's more up my alley. They're focusing more on the guns and less on the people shooting the guns. This should be really cool. And then I saw that it was going to be on H2, and I thought, this is going to be a problem. I'm almost positive that it's not included in my cable package, and there's no way that I'm upgrading the cable package, because I already pay way too much for TV that we don't watch a whole lot of. So I was kind of bummed out about it, and then I started looking around. It turns out that it is included in my cable package, which is great, but I missed it anyway. And much like the shows on History Channel, all of the shows on H2 are available online as well. If you head over to history.com, scroll to the bottom of the page, you'll see little icons for the different channels that sort of work. I guess they're like child channels of the History Channel, and you'll see H2 down there. Click on H2, it'll bring you up to their sort of homepage. Click on shows, and you can watch. And at this point, the first episode of Top Guns in its entirety for free online. So if you don't get it in your cable package, it's no big deal. Head over to history.com and you can find it there, free of charge and less commercials. So definitely the way to go if you're interested in, if you're more interested in the guns than the competitors. I did watch the show. It wasn't as good as I was hoping it to be. It's a Top Shot spinoff, so I was hoping for more in-depth history, more information about the guns, how they work, that kind of thing, but no, here's 3 guns, we're going to shoot them, here's how we rank them, this is how they did. It was entertainment, and it was more entertainment than it was educational, which was kind of bummed me out a little bit, but it's something to watch that includes guns, so there you go. Well, first up in the news, I have an update on the Philadelphia open carry incident that happened around this time last year. Before I get to talking about, or before I read the news article, I want to kind of bring you up to speed on what happened with that. You're probably familiar with it. It was covered on a lot of news stations shortly after it happened. I believe Tom Gresham talked about it on his on his radio show. I think Michael Bain talked about it on his podcast a little bit, and I think it may have been on one of the NRA, ILA podcast things that they do. I seem to remember seeing it on the NRA thing. I can't really remember it. I'm almost positive I remember Michael Bain and Tom Gresham talking about it on their podcast. But basically what happened was there was a guy that was, I guess he was visiting his mother or something, and he was walking from his mother's house to an auto parts store. And he was open carrying. There was a police cruiser or something that went by. He spots the guy's gun. He pulls over and he calls out something like, "Hey, Junior." The open carrier turns around to see a cop pointing a gun at him and screaming orders. The entire situation was recorded on the open carrier's cell phone, and it's pretty nasty audio. The police officer was holding him at gunpoint until backup arrived. After backup arrives, I mean, they're just berating the guy, belittling him, screaming at him, cursing at him. Just a really bad situation. The open carrier kept his composure during the whole thing, and then after the incident was over, after he was free to go, he posted the video on YouTube. And what made things even worse was, I guess, the Philadelphia Police Department got wind of the recording being available online. And it's not illegal to record a police officer in his duties in Pennsylvania. And I guess the police officers decided they wanted to retaliate, and they heaped on more charges after the fact. And that went to court. I believe that all those charges were dismissed. The judge threw them out. And everything has been progressing since then. And here's where this news article comes in. It is from Shall Not Be Questioned, and it is entitled "Federal Lawsuit Over Philly Open Carry Incident." It was published on February 14th, and it goes on to say, first, the federal complaint can be found here, and there's a link to it. And then it says, "The media story about the lawsuit is here," another link. "I've read over the complaint. In addition to suing over the February 2011 incident last year, he's also suing over 2 prior incidents with the Philadelphia Police. He's suing up the chain of command to reach Ramsey, the Philadelphia Police Commissioner. Section 1983 doesn't just allow you to sue the individual officers. You can also sue all the way up the chain to anyone responsible for overseeing the training of officers. The agents of the PPD are being sued in their individual capacities, which means the plaintiff here needs to overcome qualified immunity. If successful, he will be able to recover damages. This is looking like it'll be an easy case here." And 60, during discussions with, and this was pulled from the complaint, so line 60. "During discussions with PPD Internal Affairs Sergeant Maria Ciafrani, badge number 8704, which occurred after Mr. Florino filled a written complaint with Internal Affairs relating to the second incident, Sergeant Ciafrini specifically stated to Mr. Fiorino that what happened to him with regard to the first and second incident was outright illegal. Quote, outright illegal. 61. Sergeant Ciafrani also admitted to Mr. Fiorino that the policy was illegal, and admitted that officers involved in the first and second incidents were following the policy when they detained Mr. Fiorino and when they confiscated his firearms, magazine, and ammunition. Furthermore, in a May 18, 2011 radio interview with Michael Schmiernickosh, which aired live on 12:10 a.m. WPHT Philadelphia, Commissioner Ramsey admitted that at the time of the 3 aforementioned incidents, PPD officers were not aware that open carry was legal with a valid license to carry firearms, and that training on the issue was necessary and would be given to all officers. The lawsuit asked the court to enjoin the city from confiscating firearms unless a crime is committed and unless it's necessary for an investigation. It would be a huge victory for everyone if such an injunction is forthcoming from the court. It also asked for damages and attorney fees from each of the defendants. The complaint is rooted in the Fourth Amendment rather than the Second, and that's a good thing here. His Fourth Amendment rights are what was violated. So because this was a Fourth Amendment issue and not just a Second Amendment issue, it seems as though the American Civil Liberties Union, or the ACLU, is getting involved in backing him as well. So This is just kind of just a little update on what's going on and how, I don't know, how the chain of things has played out, and now we're at the federal level, I guess, or there's a federal lawsuit at this point. So just kind of an update. I've been following it because it's local, not like super local, but Philadelphia isn't terribly far from here. I get a lot of updates about it. I hear a lot about it, on news and newspapers and stuff like that. It pops up every once in a while, and it did make nationwide news at the time. So I've been following along with it. It's interesting, and the outcome should mean a lot for anyone that's open carried or plans to open carry in Philadelphia, where it seems to be a huge hassle. So just a kind of little update on what's going on with the Philly open carry incident. Well, earlier I mentioned that I only have 2 pieces of news this episode, so here is the second and final piece of news, and this one's pretty interesting. This comes from click2houston.com, and it is entitled "Bel Air Man Grabs Gun Helps Make Arrest." This was published on February 14th, and it's pretty short, so here we go. Bel Air, Texas. When Rick Mellarton heard his neighbor in the 5300 block of Holly calling for help Monday morning, he sprang into action. Mellarton's neighbor had just been robbed at gunpoint, and he was getting into his car. The robber got distracted, and the victim grabbed his gun and screamed. Mellarton called 911 and came outside with his pistol. The robber took off with his gun. The robber took off without his gun and headed for an 89-year-old neighbor's backyard. "She's a very, very dear friend of mine," Mellarton said. "She's 89 years old, and I love her to death. I figured when he turned around and proceeded to go through the gates into Ruby's backyard, I said, all bets are off." He told the robber to stop or that he would shoot. He said he fired his .50 caliber gun into the ground as a warning shot. "When this baby goes off, you know what I mean, but I mean business," Mellarton said. He was able to wrestle Joseph Anthony Smith Jr., 20, to the ground and take him away at gunpoint to police. Smith was charged with aggravated robbery. Police think Smith may have had a getaway car driver nearby. So in addition to this little news article, there's actually some video of there's an interview with this Mellarton guy, and if you're watching this video part, if you're watching this podcast via video and not audio, as I was reading the news piece, I generally pop a screenshot up on the screen so that you could see the website and what I'm reading. And you're going to see a picture of a guy with a Desert Eagle in his hand. That is not some stock photo. That is the neighbor, and I didn't realize that before I clicked play. I just thought it was some stock photo. It turns out that this neighbor is a little bit of a whack job, I think. It's a good thing that he came to his neighbor's aid and all that, but I don't know, as I'm watching this interview, I'm just thinking that this guy is a little crazy. So here's what happened. From watching the video, you get a better idea of what's going on. So there's this guy. He's getting into his car to go to work at dark 30 in the morning, and he's held at gunpoint. The guy's demanding money, his car keys, all that. The robber goes to get into the guy's car and steal it, or to get away with it, and he gets distracted. The victim grabs his gun away, and the robber takes off. The guy that now has the gun is screaming for help. This guy, Mellarton, hears it, comes running out of his house in his underwear with a Desert Eagle. He chases the guy down, fires a warning shot into the ground, which is a no-no anyway, and in his underwear, I guess the robber hears the gunshot and panics. He stops what he's doing, he turns around, he's got a guy pointing a gun at him. He says, don't shoot me, all that. So this guy in his underwear with the Desert Eagle tackles him to the ground and drags him away as the police car is pulled up. So he's got the burglar in one hand, in his underwear, Desert Eagle in the other, and the police pull up, he turns him over, and apparently this is like the third time that this guy has helped the police. It's just watch this video. It's just kind of crazy. And the thing is, the reason why I think this guy is kind of crazy, in addition to doing all this stuff which just seems a little out there. I mean, he's coming to his neighbor's aid. That's all fine and good. But the interview is where I think this guy's a little nuts. He does the entire interview with the Desert Eagle in his hand. I don't know if it's loaded, any of that stuff. His finger's off the trigger, that's good. However, his muzzle control is not so great. He's kind of waving it around as he's walking, as he's moving his wrist. At one point, him and the reporter are standing side by side, talking throughout the interview, and they're walking forward. The camera guy is in front of them, walking backwards. So all three people are moving together, and it looks like they're walking through a yard. The whole time, he's kind of like bobbing his wrist around. The muzzle's pointed at what I would imagine is directly at the cameraman. And it just seemed, all of this just seems really, really odd. So I think this guy is just a touch crazy. But he did a good thing, short of the warning shot. I don't like that. But then again, I don't think he could have just blasted the guy for no reason. So in this case, I don't think any shots should have been fired. You know, the guy was unarmed, although he didn't know that. But still, just the way this thing played out was a little crazy. This is the type of thing that you would see in a movie, not necessarily a news report or a newspaper article. So definitely check out the video and tell me if I'm right or wrong. You know, is this guy a touch crazy or what? Well, it is that time for featured content, and as I said at the beginning of the show, I barely have 3 pieces of featured content for you, and the first one is actually a video I came across earlier this week, and it's posted on YouTube. It is the Ermey NRA Trigger the Vote campaign video. It's basically a little, it's kind of like a commercial, just a little promotional video promoting voter registration. And basically it sets him up as a librarian. He says, you know, he's retired now. He's tired of being, you know, the tough guy drill instructor sort of persona, and you know, it's just time for him to relax. So he's sitting behind a librarian's desk, just kind of sniffing flowers and just enjoying the peace and quiet. And all around him, he's got, you know, various things going on. There's a very loud phone conversation going on with a guy that's playing, you know, table football at a desk. There's a couple making out in between a row of shelves that he breaks up. And then, you know, lastly, there's this guy who comes up in this T-shirt that says "Gun control is when you use 2 hands" or something like that, and he drops a load of books on the desk. So Ermey says, "Okay, give me your library card." He says, "Well, I don't have a library card." "Okay, let me see your driver's license then." "Well, I didn't drive, I walked." "Okay, well, let me see your voter registration card then." You know, and then the kid responds something like, "Well, what's that? You know, my one vote's not going to matter." And then he reverts right back into gunnery sergeant mode and just starts screaming at the guy, which is kind of funny. You see, seeing him lead up to this is the funny part. When he's screaming, it's more of the usual, so it's not as funny as everything else. But the objective here is to get people to go to triggerthevote.com and register to vote. And after he gets done screaming at this one kid, you know, he screams at the entire library, and everyone runs over to the computers to get registered. And it turns out that one guy that was having the loud, obnoxious phone call was the only guy that had a voter registration card. And you know, he's just kind of sitting back in his desk and says, you know, we're going to get along just fine. So it's an interesting little promo video. I thought it was kind of cool, definitely worth watching. And the most interesting thing was that it was like a day or two after I saw this video, American Rifleman magazine showed up. My subscription with my NRA membership arrived, and I started paging through it today. And it turns out there's an interview with Ermey in it, and in the interview he mentions filming that promo video with the NRA, and he talks about how involved he is, which I wasn't aware that he was involved. He was a member of the board of directors or something like that with NRA, and it seems though he does a lot of things for the gun industry. I didn't realize that he was as involved as he is. He's a spokesperson for Glock, which is kind of obvious. If you've ever picked up a gun magazine, you've seen his face in it with a Glock. Victory Motorcycles, he's like a spokesperson for them. He does something else, I think, in the gun industry, as well as being on some sort of board for the NRA. So I had no idea that he was as involved as he is. And the interview is pretty good, which is kind of contrary to what I always thought. In the past, when I've seen interviews with him, or I've listened to like on-air interviews with him, he's always got that shtick going, and he's always like screaming at the interviewer. He's playing the role of gunnery sergeant, and I've never really enjoyed those interviews. I mean, they're kind of funny here and there, but I want to get to know Arlie Ermey as a person in these interviews, and in this one. In this print interview, I thought it came out really good. It shed him in a very good light, and it made him seem very interesting. And after reading this interview, I'd love to know more about him. I've watched a couple of the movies that he is in. I enjoy him as an actor and things like that. So definitely worth heading over to YouTube to watch the video. If you've probably seen it by now, because it is an NRA promotional video. It is making the rounds, and it seems to be everywhere in the gun community, so you probably have seen it already. If you haven't seen it already, definitely check it out. It's well worth watching. Well, for the second piece of featured content, I have the Empty Mags podcast, episode 24, entitled What a Brute. And I've actually been looking forward to this for quite a while. Jason from the Empty Mags podcast was on a bit of a sabbatical, and there was a fairly long stretch of time between his last podcast and this one. And I had gotten word that he had got his recorder set up, straightened out, and that he was going to be producing podcasts again. And all of a sudden, it just kind of popped up in my Google Reader, and I checked it out right away. It's fairly short. It's about the same length as a lot of his other podcasts, about 20 minutes, and in it, he talks about a variety of things, about struggling to come up with discussion topics for the podcast. I can level with him there, or I see where he's coming from on that standpoint. He talks about maybe getting a co-host, which is pretty interesting, and he takes a non-firearm discussion topic this time around, in that he picked up a new compound bow, a PSE Brute. And he talks about he's not sure how it's going to be perceived because it's a gun podcast, but personally I found it very interesting, because a couple months ago I was on the fence about picking up a bow. I don't remember if I ever talked about it in the podcast, but way back in one of these videos I talked about my past as being heavily into archery. And as I got older, I got away from it. Actually, after my family moved out of Philadelphia, it kind of dropped off. I tried to get into it again in my early 20s, and it didn't really work out because I ended up moving again, and it was just too far from where I live now to go back and to visit the club that I was going to. But a couple of months ago, I was giving some serious thought into picking up a bow, and one of the things that was very appealing to me was that ammunition is reusable, and it's much cheaper. And a lot of the clubs, or I shouldn't say a lot of, two of the clubs that I'm currently a member of offer archery courses, courses through the woods that are set up all the time, from what I understand. And I was thinking, well, it's kind of similar in a sense. Sight picture. If you're using a release aid like I was in the later stages, there's trigger control there. So I thought, this will be a good way to get me out of the house into the woods, and start doing things outside that don't involve shooting rounds of ammunition at 20-some cents a pop at an hour at an hour at a time. I can go and shoot for a couple of hours, and it really won't cost me anything. So what I was looking at, I think I went to Cabela's, and I was looking at some of their packages, and the PSC package was one I was considering. The other, which I was leaning more heavily towards, was a Bear package. I think it was the Bear Charge. It was an entry-level package, ready to shoot, and I never did buy it. I wound up taking the money that I had saved up, and I went out and I bought that Glock that I'm still waiting on. But this was a really interesting podcast, and again, it sort of triggered that memory, or that thought of, I should really save up some cash and go out and buy a bow, because I really did enjoy it when I was younger, and this podcast got the juices flowing again. So if you've got 20 minutes, head over to Empty Mags and check out podcast number 24 entitled What a Brute. Well, for the last piece of featured content, I have a post from the blog Sharp as Marble, and it is entitled Speed Kills. And this is actually a post on USPSA shooting. And generally, when I read up on this blog, I'm not going to it for USPSA style stuff. I read a lot of general firearms stuff there, and I was kind of surprised to see this USPSA post. So I clicked through, I watched the video, and it's just the type of stuff that I love seeing. Point of view USPSA videos really aren't hard to come by. Go to YouTube, type in USPSA and hit enter, and you'll get pages upon pages upon pages of people shooting USPSA stages. What I find really interesting is a write-up to go along with those videos, and I got just that in this video. I got just that in this post. So first you click play, you watch the video, and then you start reading through the post, and he talks about how he shot, what he could have done better, some of the things that he was kind of disappointed about, some of the things that he was really happy about. And I really get into that kind of stuff. You can watch these videos and you really can't tell what's going on. It's not like looking through the eyes of binoculars. When he presses the gun out and squeezes the trigger, you can see the gun is in full focus, the target is in the background, but you have no idea where the bullets go. It's easy to tell whether or not someone hit steel, but when it comes to paper targets, you really don't know. So you really don't get a full understanding of what's going on by just watching the video. It's the write-up that is like the meat and potatoes of that video or that post. And hearing him talk about he shot too fast and he had misses here, and this was disappointing on this stage, and this is what he felt he did really good in this stage, it really opens your eyes and it allows you to see more. So after you read the write-up, you go back and you watch the video a second time, and then you start looking, you start comparing bullet points to what you see in the video, and then that's where everything comes together. You can sort of make out what's going on. He says, he pulled a shot here, or he shot too fast, or he had a couple of misses here on this particular target, and you can see that in the video now that you know what's going on. Now that you know what to look for, it makes it all the more interesting. And there's a link in the post to a previous video, which I clicked and watched that as well, where he talks about he did really, really well, but he shot at a snail's pace, which is completely understandable. When I shot my second match, I was so inclined to shoot really, really well that I was shooting ungodly slow. And he sort of did the same thing. It was interesting to watch. He shot really well. He scored really well. However, his time was pretty lengthy. And I remember doing the same thing. And I couldn't help but kind of laugh as I watched the video because I was doing the same thing. But these types of posts are really interesting. So I'm going to be looking even harder at Sharp as Marble for more of these USPSA style posts. I also keep an eye on Fill Your Hands because Tom does some great stuff over there. Tom does some great stuff in general, but I also really enjoy his USPSA posts with video and write-ups and things like that. So now it's looking like I have two sources for this style of post, and I'm really excited about that. So head over to Sharp as Marble and check out Speed Kills. Well, it is that time in the podcast to do the cigar and drink pairing of the episode, and this time it's not coffee. And that's got to be kind of amazing. I've been doing coffees for so long that it feels kind of weird to do this cigar and drink pairing and not have a cup of coffee handy. But what I have is Yuengling Light Lager. It is a beer that used to be, I shouldn't say used to be made here, but I think the only thing they make in Pottsville these days is the premium beer. And I think all of the lager is coming out of Florida now. But it's a beer that I've been drinking, for a long time. It's nothing fancy, but it was always the Pennsylvania regional beer. Being from Pennsylvania, being on the eastern side of Pennsylvania, Yuengling was sort of the traditional beer to drink. And the lager was never a fantastic beer, but it was our beer. So that's why I drank it, just because it was our beer. And we're getting into that time of year now where it's kind of beer season, or at least it feels like it. It's been so warm here lately that when it comes time to get something to drink, especially as like evenings are coming around, I seem to be gravitating away from coffee, just again because of how warm it's been, and I've been just feeling like having a beer. I usually don't have a lot of beer on hand. I don't drink much of it at all these days, so I ran out and I picked up a case of beer. I just like an ice cold light beer every once in a while, and because Yuengling is our beer, it's not really our beer anymore, it's distributed all over the East Coast, but because that's sort of the hometown beer, I decided to pick up a case of Yuengling Light Lager, and it's pretty light, it's easy on the palate, it's sort of fresh. It's just a very light tasting beer, so it's not. I wouldn't say it's doing a lot for the cigar. It's definitely not hurting the cigar, but it's not really accentuating any flavors or anything. The cigar is the Ortega Serie D No. 10. The number 10 is this particular size. It's a Bellicoso 6x52, I believe. And this is pretty new. I actually did a pretty lengthy review on this on Stogie Review. So if you'd like some in-depth information about the cigar, I'll link to it in the show notes. You can click on through and watch the entire video if you'd like. But just a really basic rundown. The cigar is made by Eddie Ortega, or actually the cigar is owned by Eddie Ortega. I believe the My Father factory is making the cigar in Nicaragua. I believe it's a San Andreas Maduro wrapper. I'm guessing here. I think it's a San Andreas Maduro wrapper, and the wrapper really shines with this blend. It's got a nice, it's got sort of a coffee note, chocolate, some bitter. It's very aromatic through the nose. It's a very balanced cigar in that you get a lot of flavor across the palate, you get a lot of aroma through the nose, and it smokes really well. I'm getting good thick volume of smoke. It's nice and dense, it's easy to get through the sinus. They seem to burn really well. The ash holds on for about an inch and a half, and the burn line is thin and even. It burns a little bit fast, but it's not really worth complaining about. It just burns a little fast. But the cigar, I think, runs about $7 a piece. I wound up buying a box of 10 from Buckhead, and I am not disappointed in the purchase at all. It's a pretty new cigar. This first batch is sort of a new release. It's limited in both production and distribution. There's only a handful of shops that have accounts at this point because, again, it's a new brand. And Buckhead Cigar is one of those brands. So if you're interested in trying the cigar, I would suggest heading over to my preferred retailer and ordering from Buckhead Cigars in Atlanta, Georgia. You can pick up the phone and call Mike at 404-844-0400. You can head over to askthecigarguys.com for pricing on this particular cigar, as well as pricing on others. And if you'd like to get in touch with Mike, see what he has in stock, I was talking to him on the phone earlier this weekend. He was sold out of everything, but he was expecting samplers to arrive very soon. So if you're interested in trying a sampler, one of each size, you can contact Mike on Twitter at Buckhead Cigar. He's on Google Plus and Facebook as Buckhead Cigar. And again, just get in touch with Mike, find out what the pricing is on the samplers, because I don't think it's listed on the website. And you can give him a call, order your cigars, and support not only a cigar guy, but a fellow gun guy as well. Well, for the discussion topic this week, to be quite honest with you, I really had no idea what to talk about. It seems as though coming up with topics to discuss, for 10-15 minutes at a time is getting harder and harder these days. I have some ideas that I would like to implement in the future, but they just haven't come to fruition yet. So I'm trying to span the time between now and when those things can start happening with just little odds and ends, and I'm finding it to be very, very difficult. This time, I want to talk a little bit about competitive shooting as a whole. I know that I talk a lot about USPSA stuff and how I'm really into it, but and in the past I talked about not wanting this to become a USPSA based show. I wanted to keep it general firearms, and I was almost hesitant to talk about USPSA stuff. I had already mentioned it in a featured content piece, so now I'm sort of doubling up on the competitive shooting angle. But I think it's kind of worth talking about a little bit. So, as I said in previous shows, I'm really into USPSA shooting, and the reason I got into it was merely convenience. I was looking to get into some sort of shooting sport, and looking around at my options, the closest club to my home that did competitive shooting or action shooting was a USPSA club. I joined that club only to find out that their pistol-only shoots are kind of sporadic. They're not every month like I thought they were. They do USPSA style shoots every month. However, they mix in a lot of multi-gun shoots. So in a span of 6 months, there may be only 2 months that are pistol-only shoots. So it was kind of disappointing, but I stuck with it. I paid for my membership to USPSA. I wasn't about to give it up for IDPA. I really enjoyed doing it, and I've been doing a little bit of traveling. I'm driving between 45 minutes to about an hour and 15 minutes to go to various clubs to shoot. And I had such a good time doing it last season that I'm planning on doing even more of it this season. However, I want to branch out a little bit. I want to get into trying IDPA. From what I understand, the round count is lower. It's a bit different in style because IDPA more or less dictates how you are to engage targets. You're supposed to do them in a realistic sense. So you're engaging closer targets first, and then you're working your way out. The mindset is that you want to engage the threat that's closest to you, and that's how you engage targets. With USPSA, it's a big game. You engage any target as you see fit, unless it's dictated in the course description to do otherwise, or unless they tell you which targets to start with. It's pretty much a free-for-all. You go out there, you shoot what you feel like shooting or what you think is best to shoot for you in order to get a good time and a good score. Yeah. But I really enjoy the sport. However, I want to try IDPA. It seems interesting. And it seems like they do much, much more interesting stages. I've seen, like Miguel from Gun Free Zone showed pictures of a stage where the shooter starts off with a dummy laying on top of them to simulate sort of like a mass shooting scenario where you've got bodies falling on top of you. I've seen rigging set up so that it sort of mimics a paratrooper. You're in this big metal contraption that's swinging around, and you've got to shoot at different targets. And stuff like that just looks really, really cool. I've seen sort of bridges set up on chains, so when you step on them, they start moving. You have to engage targets from this moving platform. I've seen the same sort of platform set up on top of like bowling balls within a box, so this thing shifts and moves in a limited space. But as you shift and move and the gun recoils, all that plays a role in how this platform moves, and stuff like that seems really interesting, different, and fun. So I want to give IDPA a try. I've got a listener to the podcast, John, who does steel shoots, and that seems to be less movement, but just as fun. He invited me out to a match. It's unfortunate I wasn't able to make it, and I saw pictures of the match. I saw some video of the match. It looked like a ton of fun, but I've got to say, I don't like shooting with snow on the ground. It gets pretty cold up here, and I don't typically wear gloves. So, shooting in the cold is kind of hard when you can't feel your fingers, and it looked mighty brisk in those photos. But again, falling steels looks like a lot of fun. Steel shoots, like Steel Challenge, allows you to shoot rimfire cartridges, so you can definitely step down in cost. I have a 22. It's something that I should probably be doing, because at that point, all the only real cost at that point is just your match fee. A bulk box of 550 22 long rifle rounds should probably get you through a handful of those steel matches. So the cost is really minimal for that in the rimfire division. So that's something else I would like to give a try. Another thing that I would sort of like to try, but I know I can't afford it, is 3-gun. I'm not set up for it. 3-gun requires you to have a pistol, shotgun, and rifle. All of my investment at this point, or up until this point, has been in pistols. I don't own any rifle that would be competitive. I have an old SKS that I would hate to try to use for a 3-gun match. And the shotgun that I have is an old Remington 870. It actually belongs to my father. I've used it to shoot sporting clays, but that's about it. And every time I talk to someone, they keep, I always hear, pump shotguns aren't competitive. Don't show up to a 3-gun match with a pump shotgun. You'll do miserable. So that's been kind of a deterrent. Some of the clubs do pistol shotgun matches, or pistol. They'll do 4 or 5 pistol stages, and then they'll have 2 or 3 shotgun stages as sort of side matches. I never really liked the idea of paying for a full match and only shooting a portion of the stages, so I've never done one. However, I kind of would like to give 3-gun a try at some point. But again, it seems like match fees are really expensive. The investment to get involved is really expensive. So for me, at this point, I have the pistol. That's not a big deal. If I need an auto loader, I'm probably looking at like a Mossberg 5 something, or no, what are they, 930s? They run $500-600 for the auto loader shotgun, which is a fairly substantial investment. For the rifles, I'm hearing, entry level rifles will probably run you around $1,000. So again, big match fee on top of needing rifle and shotgun just makes 3-gun just not work for me. Although it does look really interesting, and I'd like to try it at some point. But sometimes I feel like kind of a snob, because I'm doing all this USPSA shooting and I really don't get out to do much other stuff. I guess it's because I've got a big investment in USPSA. I've got the gear, I've got the equipment. I'm invested. I've got sort of rounds sorted and separated. Okay, I've got 1,200 rounds on hand. This is going to get me so many USPSA matches. I'm planning on getting into reloading, which would allow me to branch out and do some more stuff. So hopefully I can mix in a couple of IDPA matches this season. And there are a handful of clubs that do fun shoots, and I've never attended one. And I can kind of kick myself for not doing it. Every year, the one club that I've been a member of since the beginning, when I started getting into shooting, does an annual fun shoot. And it's just fun stuff. You're shooting at balloons, you're shooting at just various objects, kind of fun reactive targets, and the cost is minimal. It's a big family event. Kids, adults, wives, everyone. It's just a big family affair. Everyone goes out and shoots, and it seems like a lot of fun. So this year, even though it's going to be expensive to shoot as much USPSA as I want to, I would like to mix in some other stuff. I want to get out and shoot a steel match with John. I want to get out and shoot maybe a rimfire steel challenge match. I want to get out and give IDPA a try, at least one match this season. And who knows? I may like it so much that I start mixing in IDPA and USPSA next season, but it's definitely something I want to do, and I would urge everyone to get out and try it. If you subscribe to the mindset that it's detrimental to tactical scenarios, sure, the possibility of picking up bad habits is there, but at the same time, it's teaching you to be proficient with your handgun as far as handling skills go. You can manipulate your firearm under minimal stress or simulated stress. So that's a big plus. So I think if you have the opportunity to get out and try some sort of competitive shooting sport, I would urge you to do so. Even if there's like virtually no competitive nature there and it's just strictly a fun shoot, it's definitely worth going out and trying. One of the things that you should definitely do, though, and one thing that I didn't do the first time I went out, is help with resetting stages and things like that. If you're shooting an IDPA match or USPSA match, go to the shooting table where all the supplies are, grab that big roll of pasters, and just pull a big long section off. 3, 4, 5 feet, tear it, roll the thing back up and stick it in your back pocket. When the shooter's done, pull it out of your back pocket and just start pasting targets after they're scored. It keeps things moving, and everyone appreciates when everyone helps. If you're shooting like a steel match, or there's steel involved in the whatever match you're shooting, after you're done pasting, or if there's no pasting involved, start resetting steel. The poppers, all you have to do is stand them up. If there's pieces of steel on the target stand, just pick them up, drop them on the stand. Easy it's just super simple, easy stuff, and it keeps things moving. My first USPSA match, I really had no idea what was going on. I was shooting it blind. I had no experience with it. I didn't watch a match beforehand. I just read some information online and I showed up. And one of the things that everyone was doing is they were resetting the stage before I even knew what was going on, because I was talking to what I guess I would consider a mentor who was sort of showing me the ropes. And before I knew it, everyone was finished with resetting the stage. So that's something that I didn't do my first match, but now I try to do as much as possible. I grab a big long section of pasters and I take it with me from stage to stage to stage and just kind of do my thing and move on and try to keep things moving. So there is the discussion topic. It really wasn't any one particular item. It was pretty random, and I don't know how interesting it came off, but there it is. So let's close out this show. Well, before I let you get out of here, I want to thank you for watching or listening to episode 29 of Shooting the Breeze, the formal gun podcast of WaltInPA.com. If you have any questions, comments, or concerns and you'd like to get in touch with me, you can do so in a variety of ways. You can email me at walt@waltinpa.com. Please feel free to, if you would like to send an audio file or a video file or something to be included in a future podcast, I'd love to have it. If you would like to check out some of the other stuff that I do, I have a blog at waltinpa.com where I post mostly shooting stuff. These podcasts, for one, some USPSA stuff, stage designs, shooting videos, things like that. Just sort of match video or range video kind of stuff. All can be found there. I'm also on Twitter as @WaltW. I'm on Facebook and Google Plus as Walt White. I have a Facebook page set up for my blog, which is Walt in PA. You'll have to search for it in the little Facebook search box, and I'd appreciate it if you clicked like once you found it. I'm also on the Gun Rights Radio Network forum, where I have a Shooting the Breeze section. It's a great place not only to talk firearms, but to talk to other podcasters and discover new shows and things like that. Speaking of the Gun Rights Radio Network, if you're into podcasts, which I would imagine you are if you're listening or watching to this one, I would suggest checking out other shows on the Gun Rights Radio Network. Some of my favorites include the Gun Dudes, Pro Arms, Handgun World Show, Road Gunner Podcast, Empty Mags, Power Factor Show, and a handful of others. So I think that's about all. I don't have a list of things that I'd like to talk about at the very end of the show, so I think that's going to about close it out. So, again, thank you for watching episode 29 of Shooting the Breeze, and until next time, I will catch you later.
You can hear Gun Rights Radio Network on Stitcher Smart Radio. Stitcher allows you to listen to your favorite shows directly from your iPhone, Android phone, BlackBerry, or Palm phones, on demand and on the go. Don't have Stitcher? Download it for free today at Stitcher.com or in the app stores. Stitcher Smart Radio, the smarter way to listen to radio. Gun Rights Radio Network shows can be found under Sources.